Good morning, everyone. Lucy Collingridge, young farming champion here from Narrabri in New South Wales. We're very lucky to have Michael Bungay Stenya here with us. He is an Aussie, but he now calls Toronto home. Good morning / good evening, Michael.
Hi, Lucy. How you doing? I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy that it's morning for you and evening for me because I'm drinking heavily at this stage. So
A little bit jealous, but we're still in the coffee part of the day here.
That's right.
So I'm going to kick us off by reading your awesome bio. So,
Okay.
Michael Bungay Senior is at the forefront of coaching, making coaching and the everyday leadership behaviour. He's the author of The Coaching Habit, the best-selling coaching book of this century, with over 700,000 copies sold and 1,000 plus five-star reviews on Amazon. His new book, The Advice Trap, focuses on what it takes to stay curious a little bit longer and tame your advice monster. In 2019, he was named the #1 thought leader in coaching and was shortlisted for the Coaching Prize by Thinkers 50. Think the Oscars of management for this one. Curiosity-led plus agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a farming background as young farming champions. I don't know your background well enough to know what agricultural experience you have personally, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, hands in the dirt, what experience you have because you're a consumer. I'm guessing the jumper you're wearing's cotton, hopefully Australian cotton, Michael.
It actually is Australian cotton. This supports an Australian institution that provides mentoring to Indigenous youth. So it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've got a glass of wine, which we're going to assume is Australian wine because it's the best in the world.
I'm afraid it's Italian, but it's still very good.
So my point is, you're involved with agriculture. So I guess, how do we build those relationships that are so essential between agriculture and the outside world, but also within agriculture? Because we've just had a discussion about being, so advice driven. How do we change that and make everything so much better? Because we discussed beforehand, there are so many stereotypes out there about agriculture being closed and not taking in anyone else's information, and we're the experts here. So how do we change that stereotype? Because at the end of the day, we do care, and we do care about everyone else, and we do care about the environment and our animals and everything. How do we change what we're doing now and create a better result at the end for everyone?
Well, let me ask
Big
you
question,
this.
sorry.
Let's say you solve this. What does success look like?
I guess that would vary on the industry you're within agriculture, and as an individual independently as well.
Yeah, so pick one. Let's work on one. So pick a subsection of agriculture, or pick a particular thing where you're like, this could be interesting for us to look at.
So I'll go wool.
Okay.
I'm a wool young farming champion, and my background is in sheep and wool as a passion. So we'll go sheep and wool.
So let's say you break down some of the barrier between the sheep and wool sector and the rest of the Australian population. What's happened? What's different?
What's different at the end, like the end goal, what's different?
Yeah, what's success?
I guess it's an understanding of, in the sheep and wool industry, one of the big issues is mulesing, tail docking, and where the industry stands, I guess, and this is me speaking personally out on a limb, is, this is why we have to do it. This is why we did it. This is why I have to do it. And this is why I have to do it in the future. So I guess A would be finding a better alternative, and B would be, I guess, an understanding of the science behind what we do and why we do it for the broader community.
And sure. And if they understood that, what would happen?
There'd either be an acceptance there, or we'd find an alternative.
And let's say that they kind of get it and they accept it, then what happens?
I guess it's status quo, really, isn't it?
I'm genuinely curious because I don't know. So this is a
Yeah.
world. I mean, I spent 3 summers working on a goat farm in Robertson in New South Wales. So that's my farming experience. And I was not ever destined to be a successful agricultural person. I almost killed myself on electric fences more than once. But so,
Uh,
but we're looking at kind of the broad picture is the sheep and wool industry has methods and ways of doing things, and it feels misunderstood by the broader population. Is that fair?
yeah, yeah. Which I guess misunderstood, yes, but there's the aspect of animal welfare that comes into it as well, like personal values that would influence that. So it's not just a right, wrong. There's a lot of, yeah.
So, I mean, this is a big, complicated issue, and it's not like I'm going to have an answer or even probably any good questions around this. But here's what I noticed me going to. I'll just throw out some things. The first I would go is notice the dynamic that gets set up around this. And I think there's something really useful in a model called the drama triangle. The drama triangle says this: whenever a relationship gets dysfunctional, and they do, and this can work between individual people, but it can work between populations like the wool and sheep industry and the Australian consumers. 3 different roles play out. There's the victim, there's the persecutor, and there's the rescuer. So the victim behavior is whiny, complainy. It's so unfair. Why does this always happen? Nobody understands me. Nobody appreciates me. It's so hard. And kind of woe is me.
Yeah.
The persecutor is kind of the shouty bully. You're like, you're terrible, you're rubbish, you're bad, you're this, you're that, the other. It's kind of the finger waggling kind of pattern. And the rescuer is the jump in, fix it, solve it. Oh, don't worry, give it to me. I'll take it on. I'll be the martyr. I'll try and let's not have conflict, but let me just try and fix this for everybody. And all 3 of the roles are equally dysfunctional, and you can bounce around all 3 of these different roles even in a single conversation. You can play all three of the roles. So but what happens when you're in the drama triangle is, I'm going to say, you're not at choice as to how best to react, because you kind of get triggered and you're like, ah, and suddenly you're kind of acting out in a way that is understandable, but is not the best version of who you are, is not open to possibilities. It's not open to curiosity. And it just perpetuates a dysfunctional dynamic. So if you looked at the dynamic between wool and sheep and Australian consumer, what role do you feel the wool and sheep industry might play in the drama triangle?
Obviously, like you say, it can be multiple of them, and I think at different times it is. But for me, it's we know what we're doing. It is an animal welfare reason. So the second one,
the persecutor.
yeah.
Yeah, the finger waggler one. Got it. And which role do you think the Australian consumer plays?
Oh, I think it would be a mix of the first 2, just depending on, the personality you're dealing with. Some people would go, the victim route, and some people would go, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So for me, it's useful to just understand a dynamic, which is like, whenever this comes up from the Australian consumer, I get triggered into persecutor mode, and I move into lectury, shouty, finger waggly, look, you stupid people. If you just took the time to understand what we were doing, you wouldn't be so kind of whiny, complainy, soft, urban losers. I mean, I'm just being melodramatic. I'm not saying that's what gets said, but kind of that's the dramatic version of over the top version of this.
Yeah.
Which shuts down possibilities, because now you're like, we know who the problem is here, and it's not us, it's them.
Yeah.
I I can imagine quite honestly that from the consumer thing that they can also be kind of moralistic, finger waggly. You know, you're uneducated, unfeeling, uncaring people who just don't understand animal welfare like us in a city people do. So you've got that kind of dynamic going on as well. So useful just to go, oh yeah, look, we get triggered around this. That's helpful for me. It's helpful then to also go, what are we trying to define as success? Because trying to fix the broad relationship between the Australian consumer and the wool sheep industry, too big a problem. It's huge. It's huge, and you can never quite get your arm around it, and it's slippery, and every try you try and define it, it kind of morphs into something else.
Yeah.
So I'd be going, what's the thing if we could fix it would have the most impact? Where do we put our attention? Because you can't fix all of it. So if we could fix a thing, what would that be?